They thought it was just a massive Brahman bull, injured, quiet, and oddly still. Two hikers spotted him lying by the creek, silver-white coat soaked, breathing shallow. He didn't charge, he didn't run, he just stared. "There's an ancient Cherokee saying," Jack Whitecloud later told me, "when an animal chooses pain to protect others, the Great Spirit marks their soul." I didn't understand then. How could I? When the rescue team arrived, Dr. Blackwater leaned in to examine the bull. What he found hidden beneath the animal's massive chest made his face go pale. What was underneath, or rather, who, would leave everyone in shock. Because this isn't just a story about an animal in pain, it's about protection, sacrifice, a bond so powerful it will break your heart, and the ticking clock that threatened to wash it all away. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story. The trail was barely marked, one of those forgotten paths near the southern edge of Texas hill country, where tourists rarely wander and only locals dare hike after May, when the heat turns the landscape into a shimmering mirage. But Mason and Abigail Carter weren't ordinary hikers. They were wildlife volunteers, trained to monitor movement through remote camera traps and occasionally report signs of illegal hunting. The sun beat down mercilessly as they navigated the rocky terrain. Mason adjusted his hat, wiping sweat from his brow. They were halfway through their weekend monitoring route when they saw him. "Abby," Mason whispered, grabbing his wife's arm. "Look there." At first, they thought it was a shadow beneath the mesquite trees, but as they approached the river bend, the figure didn't move. It was enormous. A Brahman bull with a silver-white coat that gleamed like polished metal even in its dampened state. The bull lay on his side, one massive foreleg twitching slightly in the dust. His breathing was labored, each breath seeming to cost him something precious. Abigail instinctively tightened her grip on Mason's sleeve. "Don't move!" But the bull didn't react to their presence. No snort of warning, no pawing at the ground, just the quiet, shallow rise and fall of his chest. Mason raised his binoculars, focusing on the animal's face. "Something's wrong with him," he murmured. "He's hurt bad." They waited, whispering, debating, then slowly backed away to radio for help. The ranger station was almost 2 hours away. With the sun beginning its westward descent and dark clouds gathering on the horizon, they marked the GPS location and hiked back at double pace. The rescue team arrived as the first distant rumble of thunder echoed across the hills, 2 rangers and a field veterinarian named Dr. Ethan Blackwater. His weathered face bore both the sharp angles of his Cherokee heritage and the focused intensity of his medical training. He had seen wounded animals before, gunshots, infections, territorial battles, but something about the way this bull lay low to the ground, protective rather than defensive, made him pause. "Weather Service just issued a flash flood warning," one of the rangers said, checking her phone. "We've got a major system moving in from the Gulf. They're saying it could be as bad as the one 4 years back." Dr. Blackwater nodded grimly, preparing a tranquilizer dart. He approached slowly, speaking in low, even tones. The bull's eyes, dark and intelligent, tracked his movement, but there was no aggression there, only something that looked unsettlingly like resignation. The dart found its mark. The bull groaned, then went still. What happened next was something no one expected. As the sedation took hold and the team approached with stretchers and equipment, Dr. Blackwater knelt to examine the animal's wounds. That's when he saw it. Blood that wasn't the bull's coming from beneath the massive body. "Help me lift his foreleg," he commanded, his voice suddenly tense. When they did, the world seemed to stop spinning for a moment. 20 years earlier, White Cloud Ranch stretched across 1,500 acres of Texas hill country, like a testament to one man's stubborn will. Jack Whitecloud had built it from nothing, turning rocky soil and stubborn mesquite into a thriving cattle operation through sheer determination and what his late wife called mule-headed refusal to listen to reason. The morning dew still clung to the tall grass as 16-year-old Hannah Whitecloud slipped out of the house, her boots leaving dark prints in the silver-coated field. She moved with purpose, a small bag of apples clutched in one hand. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical braid, but a few strands had already escaped, dancing around her face in the gentle morning breeze. The bullpen stood at the far corner of the barn, separated from the other cattle. As Hannah approached, a young silver-white Brahman bull raised his head, nostrils flaring slightly. Most would have called him intimidating even then, with his developing muscular frame and proud bearing, but Hannah just smiled. "Morning, Thunder," she said softly. "Brought you breakfast." The bull moved to the fence with surprising gentleness for his size, accepting the apple from her outstretched palm with delicate precision. Hannah stroked his broad forehead, fingers tracing the distinctive whirl of hair between his eyes. "Don't let Dad know I'm spoiling you," she whispered. "He says you need to toughen up if you're going to be worth anything." From the ridge above the pen, Jack Whitecloud watched the interaction with a mixture of concern and grudging admiration. At 62, he still stood straight as a fence post, his weathered face deeply lined from decades under the Texas sun. His hair had gone from black to silver, but his eyes remained sharp as ever. "She's too attached to that animal," he muttered to himself. Cattle ain't pets. Yet something held him back from calling out, from putting an end to these morning visits that had become a ritual over the past year. Perhaps it was the memory of his late wife saying their daughter had inherited his heart, but thankfully, not his way of showing it. Hannah had found Thunder as a rejected calf, the runt of a neighbor's herd, sickly and unlikely to survive. She'd begged to bring him home, promising to handle all his care herself. To everyone's surprise, especially Jack's, the bull had not only survived but thrived under Hannah's attention, growing into a fine specimen that even the neighboring ranchers commented on. "That bull's got the frame of a champion," Bob Miller had said at the last cattle auction. "You thinking of putting him to stud or selling him to the rodeo circuit?" "Could fetch a pretty penny either way." Jack had just nodded noncommittally, not wanting to admit that his daughter would sooner sell the family truck than part with that bull. Back at the pen, Hannah was sitting on the bottom rail of the fence, talking to Thunder as if he understood every word. "I got accepted to UT Austin," she said, her voice a mix of excitement and uncertainty. "Full scholarship. Dad doesn't know yet." She paused, scratching behind the bull's ear. "He wants me to stay, take over the ranch someday. But there's so much more out there, Thunder. So many places I want to see." The bull nudged her boot gently, his large eyes seeming to reflect understanding beyond his nature. Hannah smiled sadly. "I'll always come back. I promise." That evening, the kitchen table became a battlefield, though the weapons were words rather than arms. "4 years of book learning won't teach you what this land can," Jack said, his coffee cup hitting the saucer with unnecessary force. "This ranch has been in our family for 3 generations." "And it still will be," Hannah countered, her chin raised in a gesture so like her father's that it would have been comical in another context. "Getting an education doesn't mean I'm abandoning the ranch. It means I might actually be able to save it." Jack's face darkened. "Save it? We ain't in need of saving, girl." "The books say otherwise," Hannah said quietly. "We're barely breaking even, Dad. The droughts hit us hard 3 years running. We need to diversify, maybe look into more drought-resistant breeding stock or—" "Books," Jack spat the word like it tasted bitter. "Your mother filled your head with too many ideas. This family has weathered worse than a dry spell." Hannah's eyes flashed. "Mom would have wanted me to go." "She always said, 'Your mother ain't here'?" Jack cut her off, immediately regretting the words as hurt bloomed across his daughter's face. He softened his tone. "Hannah, this land is our legacy. The White Clouds have raised cattle here since your great-grandfather traded his war medals for the deed. Some things matter more than fancy degrees. Maybe our legacy can be more than just doing the same thing generation after generation," Hannah said, her voice quiet but steady. "Maybe it can grow." 3 months later, Hannah left for university, taking only what would fit in her second-hand Ford pickup. Jack stood on the porch, silent as stone, as she loaded the last of her bags. "I'll be back for Thanksgiving," she said, hesitating by the driver's door. Jack nodded once, his face unreadable. "Thunder's been off his feed since you started packing." It was as close to emotional as he would allow himself to get. Hannah smiled slightly. "Take care of him for me?" Another nod. Then, as she started the engine, "This will always be your home, Hannah. Remember that." It was the last real conversation they would have for nearly 2 years. When Hannah returned, it wasn't alone. Miguel Rodriguez had been her lab partner in agricultural science, brilliant, gentle, with ambitious ideas about sustainable ranching practices. Jack took one look at the way they stood together and knew. "He's asked me to marry him, Dad," Hannah said, her hand finding Miguel's. The small diamond on her finger caught the light. "We're going to start a consulting business for ranchers looking to modernize their operations." Jack's silence stretched so long that even the cicadas seemed to pause their evening chorus. "I see," he finally said, the words falling between them like stones. "And where does this ranch fit into your modern plans?" "We want to use part of it as a demonstration site," Miguel ventured, his voice respectful but confident. "Show other ranchers what's possible with new methods. Hannah speaks so highly of your operation, sir. We think—" "You think," Jack interrupted, his eyes never leaving his daughter's face. "You've been gone 2 years and suddenly you and this consultant think you know better than 40 years of my experience?" "Dad, that's not what we're saying," Hannah pleaded. "We want to work with you, not against you." But Jack had already turned away, heading toward the barn where Thunder now stood in a larger enclosure, his size impressive even from a distance. "I sold him," Jack said without turning around. "Rodeo company out of San Antonio made an offer last month. He ships out tomorrow." Hannah's gasp was like a physical blow. "You sold Thunder? How could you? He was mine!" Jack finally turned, his face a mask of controlled fury. "Nothing here was yours, girl. You made that choice when you left." The wedding invitation arrived 6 months later. Jack placed it unopened in the drawer of his bedside table next to the faded photograph of his late wife holding newborn Hannah in the hospital. He never sent a reply. The years passed in a blur of seasons. The ranch struggled, then nearly failed during the drought of 2018. Jack might have lost everything if not for a neighboring rancher, Bob Miller's son, who bought half the acreage but allowed Jack to continue living in the family home. "Dad would have wanted it this way," young Miller had said. "He always respected you, Mr. White Cloud." Jack's hair turned fully white, his back beginning to stoop under the weight of age and regret. Occasionally he would catch glimpses of Hannah's life through the small-town grapevine. The consulting business was thriving. She and Miguel had twins, a boy and a girl. They had settled in a small community near the Colorado River, about 40 miles away. Sometimes, in moments of weakness, usually aided by a glass of whiskey, Jack would take out his phone and begin to dial the number he'd memorized from the wedding invitation. He never completed the call. And sometimes, when the rodeo came through San Antonio, he would scan the lineup for a silver-white Brahman bull named Thunderstruck, who had gained a fearsome reputation on the circuit. 19 consecutive riders thrown, according to the announcer. Jack would watch from the highest seats, something like pride mixing with shame in his chest. "Meanest bull in Texas," a young man next to him had commented during the last event. "But did you notice? He never hurts the riders after they're down. Just turns away. Strange for a bull with that kind of power." Now, as the radio on his kitchen counter crackled with storm warnings, Jack Whitecloud sat alone at his table, a cup of coffee cooling untouched before him. Meteorologists are calling this potentially the worst flooding since the Rodriguez tragedy 4 years ago, when flash floods along the Colorado claimed the lives of 2 residents. All citizens in low-lying areas are advised to evacuate immediately. Jack's hand trembled slightly as he reached for the radio's volume knob. The Rodriguez tragedy. He'd heard about it at the time, of course. The young couple swept away when the river unexpectedly overtopped its banks during the night. He hadn't made the connection then, hadn't wanted to. Later, when he saw their names in the obituary, something inside him had broken permanently. By then, it was too late for amends, too late for forgiveness, too late for anything but the hollow ache that had become his constant companion. Jack turned off the radio and stared out the window at the gathering clouds. The air felt heavy with the promise of rain and old regrets. Tucked beneath the massive bull, sheltered from sight and harm, were 2 small children, a boy and a girl no more than 3 years old. Their clothes were tattered and caked with mud, their small bodies trembling with cold despite the Texas heat. The girl's eyes fluttered open at the movement, dark and frightened, while the boy remained unconscious, his breathing shallow but steady. "Jesus Christ," one of the rangers whispered, breaking the stunned silence. Dr. Blackwater's training took over, pushing aside his shock. "Get the medical kit from the truck, now!" His hands moved with practiced precision, checking vital signs even as his mind raced to make sense of what he was seeing. The children were severely dehydrated, their skin hot with early signs of heat stroke, yet somehow alive. "How is this possible?" Abigail asked, her voice breaking as she helped Dr. Blackwater lift the little girl clear of the bull. "How did they get here?" "Where did they come from?" "More importantly," Mason added, gently extracting the boy, "how long has this bull been protecting them?" The radio crackled with static, then the urgent voice of the station dispatcher cut through. "Team, be advised, storm system intensifying. Flash flood warnings now in effect for your entire sector. Estimated time to unsafe conditions, 24 hours. Immediate extraction recommended." Dr. Blackwater nodded to the rangers. "We need to move. These children need hospital care, and we need to get this bull to the wildlife center before those creek beds fill." They worked quickly, wrapping the children in emergency blankets, starting IV fluids, and preparing the bull for transport. All the while, Dr. Blackwater noticed how the massive animal's eyes followed the children, even in his sedated state, not with aggression, but with what could only be described as concern. "I've treated thousands of cattle," he muttered to Mason as they secured Thunder to the transport sled. "I've never seen behavior like this from a bull. They're not naturally protective of young that aren't their own, especially not human children." Maybe he recognized they needed help, Mason suggested, though his tone conveyed his own disbelief at the scenario. Dr. Blackwater shook his head. "Bulls don't think that way. They're reactive, territorial. This is—" He paused, searching for the right word. "Unprecedented." With the first heavy drops of rain beginning to fall, they loaded the children into the medical transport vehicle and the sedated bull into the larger wildlife trailer. Dr. Blackwater would ride with the children, monitoring their condition while the rangers drove the bull. The Carters would follow in their own vehicle. "Meet at Crescent Wildlife Center," Dr. Blackwater instructed. "It's closest, and they have pediatric medical staff on call for the rehabilitation program." As the caravan pulled away from the creek bed, the water was already beginning to rise, erasing their footprints. The Crescent Wildlife Center was a hive of controlled chaos when they arrived. Word had spread ahead of them, and the medical team was waiting at the entrance. Dr. Sarah Winters, the center's pediatric specialist, and 2 nurses with emergency care equipment. "What's the situation?" Dr. Winters asked briskly as they transferred the children from the vehicle to proper gurneys. 2 children, approximately 3 years old, severe dehydration, possible heat exhaustion, exposure, Dr. Blackwater reported. Found under the protection of a Brahman bull, of all things. No identification, no adults in the vicinity. Dr. Winters raised an eyebrow but maintained her professional focus. "Let's get them stabilized. Then we'll worry about the how and why." "Johnson, notify Child Protective Services." As the children were wheeled away, Dr. Blackwater turned his attention to the bull. The center's large animal treatment facility was already being prepared with the veterinary team standing by. "Sedate him again before we move him," Dr. Blackwater instructed. "I don't want to take chances with an animal this size, especially not after the stress he's been through." Once Thunder was safely transferred to the treatment area, Dr. Blackwater began a more thorough examination. The bull's vital signs were concerning: elevated heart rate, irregular breathing, signs of severe exhaustion. Multiple lacerations ran along his flanks, some several days old, others fresher. His right foreleg showed signs of stress fracture, possibly from standing in the same protective position for too long. "He's been through hell," Dr. Blackwater murmured, cleaning a particularly deep wound on the bull's shoulder. "Fighting something or someone to protect those kids." As he worked around Thunder's massive head, something caught his eye: a small mark on the inside of the animal's ear, partially obscured by dried mud. Dr. Blackwater cleaned it gently, revealing what appeared to be a faded tattoo. 717. "This bull has an identifier," he called to his assistant. "Let's run it through the livestock database. Might tell us where he came from." The center director, Eleanor Kingsley, appeared at the doorway, her expression grave. "Dr. Blackwater, we have a situation developing. The storm system has accelerated. Counties issuing evacuation orders for all low-lying areas within 24 hours. "Including us?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. The Wildlife Center sat on a gentle slope above the river, normally safe from flooding, but the catastrophic storm 4 years ago had proven that normally safe meant little against the full fury of Texas weather. Eleanor nodded. "We need to start moving critical patients to the San Antonio facility immediately, your bull included, if he's stable enough for transport." Dr. Blackwater glanced at Thunder's monitors. "He's in rough shape. Another transport this soon could push him over the edge." "What's the alternative?" Eleanor asked. "We can't leave him here if we evacuate." The unspoken option hung in the air between them: euthanasia for animals too compromised to move safely. It was standard protocol during emergency evacuations, but Dr. Blackwater found himself unexpectedly resistant to the idea. "Give me time," he said finally. "Let's see how he responds to treatment. And I want to know more about his connection to those children before we make any decisions." Eleanor's expression softened slightly. "You have until tomorrow morning. After that, we have to prioritize human safety, staff, and patients." As she left, Mason and Abigail Carter entered the treatment area, their faces lined with concern. "How are the children?" Dr. Blackwater asked. "Responding to treatment," Abigail said. "The girl's awake now. She's not speaking, but the doctors say that's probably psychological rather than physical." Mason held up a small, mud-caked backpack. "We found this near where the bull was lying. Rangers just brought it in." He unzipped the sodden bag, carefully removing a plastic-wrapped bundle. Someone had taken care to waterproof the contents. Inside was a child's drawing, some soggy documents, and a photograph in a simple frame. The picture showed a young couple holding infant twins. The woman's smile was radiant, her dark hair falling over her shoulders as she cradled one baby. The man beside her looked proud, his arm around her shoulders, the other baby secure in his embrace. "I think we found our children's parents," Mason said quietly. Dr. Blackwater studied the photograph, a sense of unease growing in his chest. Something about the woman's face tugged at his memory, but he couldn't place it. His phone buzzed with a message from the database search on Thunder's ear tattoo. The results made him frown in confusion. "This can't be right," he muttered, showing the screen to the Carters. "According to this, bull number 717 is Thunderstruck, champion rodeo bull from the Rodriguez-Martinez circuit. But that doesn't explain what he was doing with those children or how—" A commotion from the central building interrupted him. Raised voices, hurried footsteps, and then Dr. Winters appeared at the door, her expression a mix of concern and urgency. "The girl is asking for Thunder," she said. "She won't be calmed until she sees him. And there's something else. A man just arrived claiming to be the children's great-grandfather. Says his name is Jack Whitecloud." Outside, the first bands of the storm lashed against the windows, rain falling in sheets that distorted the world beyond. The wind carried the low, distant rumble of thunder, nature's countdown clock, ticking away their remaining time. Jack Whitecloud stood in the center's lobby like a man out of time, his weathered hands clutching the brim of a well-worn Stetson. Rain dripped from his jacket onto the polished floor, creating a small puddle that seemed to anchor him in place. At 82, he still carried himself with the straight-backed dignity of a man accustomed to facing life's hardships head-on. But there was something in his eyes now, a vulnerability that made him appear suddenly fragile. Dr. Blackwater approached him cautiously. "Mr. Whitecloud? I'm Dr. Ethan Blackwater, Chief Veterinarian here at Crescent. I understand you believe you know the children we found." Jack's eyes, sharp despite his age, fixed on Dr. Blackwater with sudden intensity. "Where are they? Are they hurt?" "They're receiving treatment," Dr. Blackwater assured him. "Dehydration, exposure, minor injuries, but they're responding well." "How did you know they were here?" Jack's grip on his hat tightened. "Heard it on the emergency broadcast. 2 children found near Serpent Creek, brought to Crescent Wildlife Center." His voice wavered slightly. They said a bull was protecting them." Dr. Blackwater nodded slowly. "That's correct. A Brahman bull." "It's Thunder, isn't it?" Jack interrupted, something like desperation creeping into his voice. "Thunderstruck. Big silver-white bull, scar on his right flank, mean as hell in the arena but gentle as a lamb with Hannah." The name hit Dr. Blackwater like a physical blow. Hannah? Hannah Whitecloud? He remembered now where he'd seen that face. The woman in the photograph looked remarkably like the young veterinary student who had occasionally volunteered at the center years ago. Sweet-natured, dedicated with a special way with the most difficult animals. "My daughter," Jack confirmed, his voice rough with emotion. "She married Miguel Rodriguez. Those twins, they'd be their children, my grandchildren." "Mr. Whitecloud," Dr. Blackwater said carefully. "Hannah and Miguel Rodriguez. They were the ones lost in the flash flood 4 years ago, weren't they?" Jack nodded once, the simple gesture carrying the weight of years of grief. "Never even got to meet my grandchildren. My own damn fault. Too stubborn, too proud to reach out while Hannah was alive." His eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Now the only family I have left are 2 little ones who don't even know me." Bill Montgomery, the wildlife biologist, had arrived during their conversation. He stood quietly to the side, but now he stepped forward, a tablet in his hands. "Mr. Whitecloud, I've been checking the database on that bull," he said. "Thunderstruck was sold to the Rodriguez-Martinez Rodeo Company 15 years ago, became one of their star performers. According to their records, he escaped during a show in San Marcos 4 years ago, right after the flood that took your daughter. Jack's face paled. "You're saying thunder broke out after Hannah died?" "It appears so," Bill confirmed. "There were scattered sightings of him over the years, but nothing concrete. Most people assumed he died in the wild or been illegally captured." Dr. Blackwater's mind raced, trying to connect the impossible dots. "But how did he end up with the children? And where have they been for 4 years?" "The twins weren't with Hannah and Miguel that night," Jack said quietly. "They were staying with Miguel's mother in San Antonio. After the accident, she took them in. Good woman, Maria Rodriguez. She sent me pictures sometimes, though I never had the courage to visit." His hands trembled slightly. "Maria died 3 months ago. Cancer. I heard the children were placed with Miguel's cousin near Marble Falls, but I didn't think it was my place to interfere." The center director joined their group, her expression grave. "I've just spoken with Child Protective Services. They confirmed that 2 children matching our patients' descriptions were reported missing from a property outside Marble Falls 5 days ago during a family gathering. The cousin thought they were with another relative, and by the time they realized the children were truly missing, the initial search was hampered by the approaching storm." "5 days," Dr. Blackwater murmured, shaking his head in disbelief. "Those children were out there for 5 days, and somehow that bull found them and kept them alive." "Not just any bull," Jack said, his voice gaining strength. "That's no ordinary bull. That's Thunderstruck, meanest rodeo bull in Texas. He threw 19 riders in his prime, caused more broken bones than any bull in the circuit." There was a strange pride in his voice now. "But he was Hannah's first. She raised him from a calf, bottle-fed him when he was sick. That bull would have walked through fire for her." "Doctor?" Winters approached their group, her expression cautiously optimistic. "The children are stabilized. The boy is sleeping naturally now, but the girl is asking again for thunder. She becomes distressed when we tell her she can't see him." Jack took a halting step forward. "My grandchildren, may I see them?" Dr. Winters hesitated, looking to the CPS representative who had just arrived. After a brief consultation, the representative nodded. "You'll need to be properly identified, Mr. Whitecloud, but given the circumstances, a supervised visit seems appropriate." "I'd like to try something first," Dr. Blackwater interjected. "Mr. Whitecloud, would you be willing to accompany me to see Thunder? He's sedated but stable. If he truly was your daughter's bull, he might recognize your scent." Jack nodded wordlessly, and they made their way to the large animal treatment facility. The storm's intensity had increased, rain pounding against the metal roof like 1,000 impatient fingers. Thunder lay on a reinforced treatment platform, his massive chest rising and falling with labored breaths. IVs delivered fluids and antibiotics, and monitoring equipment tracked his vital signs. Jack stopped in the doorway, visibly shaken by the bull's condition. "My God," he whispered. "What happened to him?" "He fought to protect those children," Dr. Blackwater said simply. "The wounds on his flanks suggest he faced off with predators, probably coyotes, maybe a mountain lion. The fracture in his foreleg indicates he stood guard without rest for days. He's severely dehydrated, suggesting he prioritized finding water for the children over his own needs." Jack approached slowly, his boots scuffing softly on the concrete floor. Thunder's ears twitched at the sound, and his massive head turned slightly toward the noise. "Hey, old boy," Jack said, his voice thick with emotion. "Remember me? Hannah's daddy." To everyone's astonishment, Thunder's eyes opened fully at the sound of Hannah's name. A low, rumbling sound emanated from deep in his chest, not threatening, but almost like recognition. "I'll be damned," Bill whispered. Jack reached out a trembling hand, placing it gently on Thunder's broad forehead, right at the distinctive whirl of hair that Hannah had always called his thinking spot. "You found them, didn't you?" Jack murmured. Somehow you found Hannah's babies and kept them safe." Thunder's eyes fixed on Jack with an intelligence that seemed to transcend his nature. He made that rumbling sound again, and his massive body seemed to relax slightly under Jack's touch. Dr. Blackwater checked the monitors, noting with surprise that Thunder's vital signs had stabilized somewhat. "His heart rate's improving," he said. "Blood pressure, too." "He's responding to you." The center director appeared in the doorway, her expression urgent. "Storms intensifying faster than predicted. Flash flood warnings have been upgraded to emergencies for all surrounding counties. We're down to 18 hours before mandatory evacuation, and they're saying even that might be optimistic." Dr. Blackwater nodded grimly. "We need to make decisions quickly about which animals can be transported safely." He glanced at Thunder's monitors. "He's more stable than I expected, but moving him again so soon is a significant risk." "What happens if you can't move him?" Jack asked, his hand still resting on Thunder's forehead. The unspoken answer hung in the air until Eleanor finally voiced it. "Standard protocol would be humane euthanasia for animals too compromised to evacuate safely." Jack's expression hardened. "No! This bull saved my grandchildren. I won't let you put him down." "Mr. White Cloud," Eleanor began gently, "I understand your feelings, but—" "No, you don't understand," Jack interrupted, his voice suddenly fierce with the authority of a man used to being obeyed. "This bull is the last living connection my grandchildren have to their mother. He's family." The word hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Dr. Blackwater found himself nodding slowly. "We'll give him every chance," he promised. "Let's see how he responds over the next few hours. If his condition improves enough, we'll arrange transport." A nurse appeared at the door, her expression apologetic. "Dr. Blackwater, the little girl is becoming increasingly agitated. She's asking for her brother now and still insisting on seeing Thunder. Dr. Winters is concerned about her blood pressure." "Bring her brother to her room," Dr. Blackwater instructed. "And—" he hesitated, then made a decision that went against every protocol. "And prepare to bring the girl here with full medical monitoring. If seeing this bull will calm her, it's worth trying." As the nurse hurried away, Jack turned to Dr. Blackwater, his eyes filled with a gratitude too profound for words. "Thank you," he managed finally, "for understanding what matters." "I grew up on Cherokee land," Dr. Blackwater said quietly. "My grandmother taught me that animals carry spirits older and wiser than our own. I've spent my career balancing that teaching with Western medicine." He glanced at Thunder. "But sometimes, science can't explain what we're seeing." The radio on Eleanor's belt crackled with another emergency update. "All personnel be advised. Marble Falls Dam reporting potential structural concerns. Additional water release may be necessary in next 12 hours. All downstream areas should accelerate evacuation preparations." Eleanor's face tightened. "That's us. If they release water from the dam, our evacuation timeline just got cut in half." Outside, lightning split the darkening sky, followed almost immediately by a boom of thunder that shook the building's foundations. The storm wasn't just approaching anymore. It had arrived, and with it, the clock had started ticking even faster. 30 minutes later, Dr. Winters wheeled the little girl into Thunder's treatment area. She was small for her age, dark hair framing a face that echoed her mother's features. Medical monitoring equipment accompanied her, an IV still attached to her thin arm. Her eyes, however, were alert and searching. When she saw Thunder, something remarkable happened. The anxiety that had creased her small face melted away, replaced by an expression of such profound relief that it brought tears to Jack's eyes. She extended her arms toward the bull, making soft sounds that weren't quite words. "His name is Thunder," Jack said gently, approaching the wheelchair. "He was your mama's special friend when she was little, just like he's been yours." The girl looked at Jack, really studying him for the first time. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she spoke. "Mama's thunder." Dr. Blackwater exchanged a glance with Dr. Winters. This was the first confirmation that the girl could speak at all. "That's right, little one," Jack said, his voice breaking slightly. "Mama's thunder." He knelt beside her wheelchair, bringing himself to her eye level. "My name is Jack. I'm your mother's daddy, your grandfather." The girl regarded him solemnly, then pointed to herself. "Lily," she said. Then she pointed toward the room where her brother rested. "Jamie." "Lily and Jamie," Jack repeated, as if committing the names to memory like a prayer. "Hannah's children." Thunder made a low, rumbling sound, his massive head shifting toward Lily's voice. The girl reached out, straining against the safety belt of her wheelchair. "May I?" Jack asked Dr. Winters, gesturing toward Lily. After checking the monitors, Dr. Winters nodded. "Briefly, her vitals are actually improving, which is remarkable." Jack carefully unbuckled the belt and lifted Lily into his arms. With slow, measured steps, he carried her to Thunder's side, standing close enough that she could place her small hand on the bull's broad forehead, right beside Jack's weathered one. "Thunder," Lily said, her voice stronger now. "Good Thunder." As if understanding her words, the bull's eyes fully opened, focusing on the child. His breathing, which had been labored, seemed to ease slightly. One of the monitors registered the change, a steadier beeping filling the quiet room. "Well, I'll be," Dr. Blackwater murmured. "They're stabilizing each other." The moment was interrupted by the arrival of Mason Carter, rain-soaked and breathing hard. "We found something," he said, holding up a waterproof bag. "Abby and I went back to where we found Thunder and the kids. The creek was already rising, but we managed to retrieve this from a fallen tree near the site. Doctor." Blackwater took the bag, carefully opening it to reveal a woman's wallet, sodden but intact, and a small mud-caked journal. The ID inside the wallet bore the name Hannah Rodriguez. "These were Hannah's," Jack said, his free arm still cradling Lily against his chest. "How did they get there?" Mason shook his head. "No idea. But there's more. We found hoof prints, lots of them, leading from the direction of Marble Falls all the way to where we found Thunder and the children. He tracked them, Dr. Blackwater. Somehow that bull tracked those children for miles. The revelation hung in the air, impossible yet undeniable." Dr. Blackwater carefully handed the wallet and journal to Jack, who accepted them with trembling fingers. "I need to check on my team," Eleanor said, breaking the silence. "The evacuation preparations can't wait. Dr. Blackwater, we need decisions on patient transport within the hour." As she left, Dr. Blackwater turned to Dr. Winters. "How soon can the children be moved safely?" "They're responding well to treatment," she replied. "With proper medical support, they could be transported to San Antonio General by this evening. The boy, Jamie, should be waking up soon." Jack looked down at Lily, then across at Thunder. "And him?" he asked, the question heavy with meaning. Dr. Blackwater checked Thunder's latest readings. "His condition has improved since Lily arrived, but he's still critical. Moving him would be extremely risky." "Then I'll stay with him," Jack said, the decision clear in his voice. "Mr. Whitecloud," Dr. Winters began gently, "that may not be possible. If evacuation orders become mandatory—" "I've weathered worse storms than this on my ranch," Jack interrupted. "And I've lost too much already. I won't abandon him, not when he never abandoned my family." Before anyone could respond, the lights flickered, then stabilized. A moment later, Eleanor's voice came over the PA system. "Attention all staff, we are now on emergency power. Please complete evacuation preparations according to protocol. Mandatory evacuation is now expected within 12 hours. The timeline was shrinking faster than anyone had anticipated. Outside, the storm's fury increased, rain pounding against the building like nature's own countdown clock. 20 years earlier, Hannah Whitecloud stood in the drizzling rain outside the cattle pen, her college acceptance letter crumpled in her pocket. Thunder pressed his head against the fence, sensing her distress. "Dad just doesn't understand," she whispered, stroking the young bull's damp forehead. "He thinks anything beyond this ranch is a betrayal." Thunder nudged her hand gently, his dark eyes seeming to offer silent support. Hannah smiled despite her tears. "At least you're on my side," she said. "Always have been, haven't you?" From the shelter of the barn doorway, Jack Whitecloud watched his daughter, an ache spreading through his chest. She looked so much like her mother, the same determined set of her shoulders, the same way of finding comfort in the company of animals rather than people. His wife had been the gentle one, the mediator between father and daughter when Jack's stubbornness collided with Hannah's independence. Since Clara's death 3 years ago, that buffer was gone, and Jack found himself increasingly unable to bridge the growing gap between himself and his only child. "She's got her heart set on leaving," he muttered to himself, just like Clara always feared she would. What he couldn't bring himself to admit, not even in the privacy of his own thoughts, was how terrified he was of being left alone. The ranch had always been a family operation. Without Hannah, it would just be land and cattle, meaningless without legacy. Later that evening, when Hannah finally came inside, soaked to the skin and mud-splattered, Jack was waiting at the kitchen table, a mug of coffee cooling before him. "You'll catch your death out there," he said gruffly, pushing a towel across the table toward her. Hannah took it silently, drying her hair with quick, efficient movements. "I've been thinking about Thunder," she said finally. "What about him?" Jack asked, somehow knowing he wouldn't like what came next. "I want your word you won't sell him while I'm gone," Hannah said, meeting his eyes directly. "He's special, Dad, not just another head of cattle." Jack's jaw tightened. "You're talking about him like he's a pet dog, not a 1,000-pound bull that'll be worth good money as breeding stock in another year." "He's more than money," Hannah insisted, a flash of anger coloring her cheeks. "He's the first calf I raised myself. He matters to me." "And this ranch doesn't?" Jack countered, his voice rising despite his efforts to stay calm. 4 generations of Whiteclouds have worked this land, built something that matters, and you're ready to walk away for some piece of paper from a university that doesn't give a damn about you." Hannah flinched as if he'd struck her. "That's not fair. I'm not abandoning the ranch. I'm trying to learn how to save it. We're barely breaking even, Dad. Another drought like last year's and we could lose everything." "We've weathered hard times before," Jack said stubbornly. "Not like this," Hannah said, her voice softening with a maturity beyond her years. "The world is changing. We need to change with it or get left behind." Jack stared into his coffee, unable to meet her eyes. "Your mother always said you were the smart one," he admitted finally. "Got her brains instead of my hard head." It was as close to concession as he could manage. Hannah recognized the olive branch for what it was. "I'll come back," she promised. "Every chance I get. And when I graduate, I'll bring what I've learned back to the ranch. Make it better, stronger." Jack nodded once, then spoke the words that would haunt him for decades to come. "If you walk out that door, Hannah, you do it knowing things won't be the same. Some choices can't be undone." The hurt that flashed across her face would replay in his nightmares for years afterward, but his pride wouldn't let him take the words back, not even when she turned away, shoulders straight and head high, just like her mother when she'd made up her mind. The next morning, Hannah left for the University of Texas. Jack stood on the porch, silent and stone-faced, as she loaded the last of her bags into her pickup truck. In the pasture beyond, Thunder watched from the fence line, his distinctive silver-white coat visible even at a distance. Hannah walked over to him one last time, pressing her forehead against his in a gesture of goodbye that seemed almost sacred in its simplicity. Jack could have called out then, could have walked down those porch steps and embraced his daughter, told her he was proud, that he loved her, that he would keep Thunder safe until she returned. Instead, he turned and went inside, closing the door on the image of his daughter driving away down the long ranch road, dust billowing behind her like the last vanishing traces of what might have been. In the treatment room, Jack cradled Lily against his chest, watching as Dr. Blackwater checked Thunder's latest readings. The memory of that morning, the last time he saw Hannah before their estrangement, pressed down on him with physical weight. "His oxygen levels are improving," Dr. Blackwater noted, genuine surprise in his voice. "And the inflammation around his wounds is starting to respond to the antibiotics." "He's fighting," Jack said softly, more to himself than anyone else. "Always was too stubborn to quit." Abigail Carter entered, her expression brightening when she saw Lily awake and alert. "The boy, Jamie, is awake too," she reported. "He's asking for his sister and saying something about a big friend." Dr. Winters nodded. "I'll prepare to move him here as well. Keeping the children together seems to be beneficial for their recovery." Jack's phone buzzed with an incoming call. He shifted Lily carefully to check the screen, then stiffened. "It's Miguel's cousin, the one who was watching the children." He answered, listening intently for several minutes, his expression growing increasingly troubled. When he finally ended the call, his hand was shaking slightly. "The cousin, Eduardo, says the children wandered off during a family barbecue at their property near Marble Falls," Jack reported. "They'd been staying with him since Maria passed. He thought they were with another relative, and by the time they realized the children were truly missing, the storm had already started." "That was 5 days ago," Mason said, the implication clear. "Those children have been out in the elements all this time." Jack nodded grimly. "Eduardo says they searched everywhere, but the property backs up to state land, hundreds of acres of rough country. The police had search teams out, but with the storm coming in—" He trailed off, looking down at Lily with new wonder. "How did they survive? And how did Thunder find them?" Dr. Blackwater had been examining the contents of Hannah's wallet more carefully. He pulled out a small, worn photograph that had been tucked behind her driver's license. It showed a younger Hannah standing beside Thunder, her arm draped over his neck in a gesture of easy affection. "Animals have capabilities we don't fully understand," he said quietly. "Especially when it comes to those they've bonded with. Thunder was Hannah's bull. These are Hannah's children." Perhaps that connection was enough. The science-minded part of Dr. Blackwater knew how improbable this explanation was, but standing in that room, watching the bull respond to Lily's presence, he couldn't dismiss it entirely. Jack gently placed Lily back in her wheelchair as Dr. Winters prepared to bring Jamie to join them. When she was securely settled, he turned to the small waterproof journal that had been recovered with Hannah's wallet. His fingers traced the embossed H on its cover before carefully opening it. The pages were filled with Hannah's neat handwriting, dates, notes, sketches of plants, and sustainable farming techniques. Jack flipped through them, a physical record of the life his daughter had built without him. Then he reached an entry that made his breath catch. "April 15th. Took the twins to see Dad's ranch today." Didn't go in, still not ready for that conversation. Just drove by, slowly. "The place looks smaller than I remember, the south pasture overgrazed. Miguel says I should just call him, that life's too short for stubborn silence." He's right, of course. But every time I pick up the phone, I remember Dad's words when I left. Some wounds take longer to heal than others. Maybe next month when the twins are a little older. The entry was dated just 3 weeks before the flood that took Hannah and Miguel's lives. Jack's vision blurred with tears. She had been so close, just at the end of his driveway, and he had never known. "Mr. White Cloud?" Dr. Blackwater's voice broke through his grief. "Jamie's here." Jack looked up to see Dr. Winters wheeling in a small boy, the mirror image of his sister, except for a stubborn cowlick that made his dark hair stand up at the crown. Unlike Lily's solemn demeanor, Jamie's eyes were wide and curious, taking in everything around him. When he spotted Thunder, the boy let out a happy sound and pointed excitedly. "Big friend! Mama's big friend!" Jack crossed to the boy's wheelchair, kneeling as he had done with Lily. "Hello, Jamie. I'm your grandfather." Jamie studied him with the direct, unfiltered gaze of a child. Then, with the simplicity that only children possess, he reached out and patted Jack's wet cheek. "Sad," he observed. "Yes," Jack admitted, covering the small hand with his own. "But happy, too, to meet you and your sister." Jamie seemed to accept this contradiction without difficulty. His attention returned to Thunder, who had turned his massive head toward the sound of the boy's voice. "He kept us safe," Jamie said matter-of-factly, "from the bad dogs and the rain. He found us when we were lost and scared." It was the most either child had spoken since their rescue, and the adults exchanged meaningful glances over their heads. "Can you tell us what happened, Jamie, Doctor?" Blackwater asked gently. "How did you get lost?" Jamie's brow furrowed in concentration. "We were at Uncle Eddie's. There was a party. Lily and me went to see the creek because I wanted to catch frogs." He looked down, suddenly shy. "We weren't supposed to go alone, but then it got dark and we couldn't find the way back. We walked and walked, but everything looked the same." "And Thunder?" Jack prompted softly. "When did you meet him?" "When the bad dogs came," Jamie said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "They had sharp teeth and yellow eyes. They were growling at us. Lily was crying. Then Thunder came and made them go away. He let us sleep next to him when it was cold. He found water for us to drink." The simple account, delivered in a child's halting vocabulary, painted a picture more vivid than any adult could have provided. Thunder, somehow impossibly, had found Hannah's children in their moment of greatest danger and appointed himself their protector. The center's PA system crackled to life again. "Attention all staff, evacuation transport for critical patients will begin in 1 hour. All non-essential personnel should prepare for immediate departure. Mandatory evacuation is now expected within 6 hours due to accelerated flooding conditions." The countdown was accelerating. Outside, the storm howled with increasing fury, as if determined to erase every trace of human presence from the landscape. Dr. Blackwater checked Thunder's monitors once more, then turned to Jack with grave eyes. "His condition has improved, but not enough for safe transport. The vibration alone from the vehicle could send him into shock." The unspoken question hung in the air. What would they do now? Jamie reached out toward Thunder, straining against his wheelchair's safety belt. "Don't leave him," the boy said, his young voice suddenly fierce with conviction. "He didn't leave us." From the mouths of babes, Jack thought, the simple truth cutting through all the complex medical considerations and evacuation protocols. Thunder hadn't abandoned Hannah's children when they needed him most, and now Jack couldn't abandon Thunder. "The children need to go to San Antonio," Jack said firmly. "But I'm staying with Thunder." "Mr. White Cloud," Eleanor began, having returned during Jamie's story, "I can't authorize civilians to remain during a mandatory evacuation. The liability alone—" "I'm not asking permission," Jack interrupted, his voice carrying the quiet authority of a man who had made his final decision. "Those children are my responsibility now, and they need proper medical care. But Thunder is family too, and I won't leave him to die alone." Dr. Blackwater studied Jack's face, seeing the unyielding determination there. Then he glanced at the monitoring equipment, at the children's faces, at the massive bull who had somehow defied everything science understood about animal behavior. "I'll stay too," he said finally. "As Thunder's attending physician, I can authorize special arrangements for his care." He turned to Eleanor. "We'll need the building's highest point cleared and prepared. If the first floor floods, we'll need somewhere to move him." Eleanor looked between the two men, clearly wanting to object further. But something, perhaps the unwavering conviction in their expressions, or perhaps the extraordinary circumstances that had brought them all together, stopped her. "You have 4 hours," she said finally. "After that, we can't guarantee any emergency response if conditions deteriorate." As she left to coordinate the remaining evacuations, Jack turned to the twins who were watching him with matching expressions of solemn concern. "You two need to go where the doctors can take good care of you," he explained gently. "But I promise I'll look after Thunder, and as soon as it's safe, we'll all be together again." Lily reached for his hand, her small fingers curling around his weathered ones. "Promise?" she asked, the single word carrying the weight of a lifetime of broken promises she was too young to understand. "I promise," Jack said, the words feeling like a sacred vow. And white clouds always keep their promises. Outside, another crash of thunder shook the building's foundations, as if nature itself was challenging his words. The storm was intensifying, water levels rising, and time was running out. As the evacuation preparations accelerated around them, Jack sat beside Thunder's massive form, one hand resting on the bull's broad forehead. The children had been reluctantly wheeled away to prepare for transport, but not before each had placed a solemn kiss on Thunder's nose, a gesture so tender it had brought unexpected tears to Dr. Blackwater's eyes. "You did good, old boy," Jack murmured to Thunder. "Better than I ever did." The bull's eyes, dulled by pain and medication, still seemed to focus on Jack with an intelligence that transcended his nature. A low rumble emerged from his chest, not quite a sound of pain, but something deeper, more complex. Dr. Blackwater checked the latest readings on Thunder's monitors. "His vital signs are holding steady," he noted with cautious optimism. "The antibiotics seem to be helping with the infection, but that leg fracture concerns me." "The bone structure is compromised from years of rodeo stress," Jack nodded, never taking his eyes off Thunder. "He was bred for strength, not jumping. 8 seconds on his back was enough to break most riders. Doing what he did, tracking those children, standing guard over them for days, it went against everything his body was built for." A comfortable silence fell between the two men, broken only by the steady beep of monitoring equipment and the increasing howl of wind outside. Dr. Blackwater studied Jack's weathered profile, seeing in it the lines of grief, regret, and newfound determination. "May I ask you something, Mr. White Cloud?" he finally said. Jack glanced up, his expression guarded but not unwelcoming. "Seems fair, considering you're risking your life to stay here with us. Why didn't you reach out to your grandchildren after Hannah passed? Even if you and your daughter weren't speaking, those children are your blood." The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. Jack's hand continued its gentle rhythm on Thunder's forehead, as if drawing strength from the contact. "Pride," he said finally, the single word carrying the weight of years of regret. "Stubborn, foolish pride. I told myself they were better off without an old man's grief in their lives. That Miguel's family would give them everything they needed." His voice roughened. "Truth is, I was afraid of seeing Hannah in their faces every day, and knowing I'd lost my chance to make things right with her." Dr. Blackwater nodded slowly. "My grandmother, she was full-blood Cherokee, used to say that fear and pride are twin spirits that keep us from our true path." "Wise woman, your grandmother," Jack acknowledged. "Took a bull with more sense than me to show me what really matters." He glanced toward the door where the children had disappeared. Those little ones have lost so much already. Their parents, their grandmother, now their home. Yet they still have so much love to give, even to a cantankerous old bull. And to a cantankerous old man, Dr. Blackwater suggested with the hint of a smile. For the first time since his arrival, Jack's face softened into something approaching a smile. Maybe so, if I'm lucky enough to get the chance. Their conversation was interrupted by Abigail Carter, who entered carrying a large thermal container. "Thought you both could use some coffee," she said, pouring the steaming liquid into 2 mugs. "Mason's helping load the last of the critical patients. The first convoy already left for San Antonio." "The children?" Jack asked immediately. "Ready to go in the next group," Abigail assured him. "Dr. Winters is with them. They're asking about you and Thunder, but they're being very brave." Jack accepted the coffee with a nod of thanks. "They get that from their mother." "Hannah never showed fear, even when she was scared half to death." "Mr. Whitecloud," Abigail said hesitantly, "Mason and I found something else at the creek bed before the water rose too high." She reached into her pocket and withdrew a small object, a tarnished silver pendant on a broken leather cord. "It was caught in the roots, near where we found Thunder and the children." Jack's hand trembled as he took the pendant. "This was Hannah's," he said, his voice barely audible. "My wife gave it to her on her 16th birthday. Silver Thunderbird, symbol of strength and protection." He turned it over, revealing an inscription on the back. "Fly high, stay true." "How did it get there?" Dr. Blackwater wondered aloud. "Hannah was wearing it in the photograph with the twins," Abigail said, "the one in her wallet." Jack closed his fingers around the pendant, the metal warm against his palm. "She must have been wearing it when—" He couldn't finish the sentence. The implication hung in the air, unspoken, but understood. The creek where Thunder and the children had been found must have some connection to the flood that had taken Hannah and Miguel 4 years earlier. The coincidence was too great, the circle too perfect to be mere chance. A sudden commotion outside the treatment room drew their attention. Eleanor appeared in the doorway, her face tight with tension. "River's rising faster than predicted," she reported. "County just upgraded to immediate evacuation orders. The last medical transport leaves in 30 minutes. After that, we're on our own until the storm passes." Dr. Blackwater nodded grimly. "We've prepared the second-floor conference room if we need to move Thunder. The reinforced floor should support his weight." "And if the water reaches the second floor?" Eleanor asked, the question direct but not unkind. Dr. Blackwater met her gaze steadily. "Then we'll have bigger problems than finding high ground." Eleanor's radio crackled with an urgent transmission. She listened, her expression growing increasingly grave. "Understood. We'll expedite final departure." She turned back to the group. "That was emergency management. They're releasing water from the dam to prevent catastrophic failure. We have less than 4 hours before the access road will be underwater." As if punctuating her words, a flash of lightning illuminated the room, followed almost immediately by a deafening crack of thunder. The lights flickered ominously before stabilizing. "I need to oversee the final evacuation," Eleanor continued. "Dr. Blackwater, this is your last chance to reconsider. Once that medical transport leaves, you're committed to staying." Dr. Blackwater glanced at Thunder, then at Jack, his decision already made. "I'm staying." Eleanor nodded once, accepting his choice. "I've left emergency rations and equipment in the second-floor staff room. Satellite phone is charged and in the emergency kit. When the water recedes enough for helicopter access, call the number programmed in it." With that, she was gone, leaving behind the lingering sense that time was running out faster than anyone had anticipated. "You should go see the children before they leave," Dr. Blackwater told Jack. "Say your goodbyes properly. I'll stay with Thunder." Jack hesitated, torn between responsibilities. What if he takes a turn while I'm gone? I'll come get you immediately, Dr. Blackwater promised. But those children need to know you're coming back to them, that this isn't another abandonment. Jack nodded slowly, understanding the deeper meaning behind the doctor's words. He carefully placed Hannah's pendant in his shirt pocket close to his heart, then made his way to the medical staging area where the final patients were being prepared for transport. He found Lily and Jamie sitting side by side on a gurney, wrapped in fresh blankets, their small faces solemn as they watched the busy activity around them. When they spotted him, their expressions brightened simultaneously. "Grandpa!" Jamie called, the title coming naturally to his lips despite their brief acquaintance. "Is Thunder better?" Jack's heart constricted at being called Grandpa for the first time. He moved to their side, placing a gentle hand on each child's shoulder. "Thunder's resting comfortably," he said, choosing his words carefully. "Dr. Blackwater is taking good care of him." "Are you coming with us?" Lily asked, her perceptive eyes searching his face. Jack shook his head slowly. "Not just yet, little one. Thunder needs me to stay with him until he's strong enough to travel, but as soon as the storm passes, I'll come to you in San Antonio. That's a promise." "And then we'll all go home together?" Jamie asked hopefully. The simple question caught Jack off guard. Home. These children had lost their home, first with their parents' death, then their grandmother's passing, and now their displacement from their cousin's care. They had no permanent home to return to, except perhaps one. "Yes," Jack said, the decision crystallizing in his mind even as he spoke. "Then we'll all go home together, to White Cloud Ranch where your mama grew up. Would you like that?" Both children nodded solemnly, accepting his words with the trust that only the very young can offer so freely. "Mr. Whitecloud?" Dr. Winters approached, clipboard in hand. "We're ready to load the children now. Their medical records have been transferred to San Antonio General, and Child Protective Services has been notified of your relationship and intention to petition for guardianship." Jack blinked in surprise. "I haven't said anything about guardianship yet." Dr. Winters smiled slightly. "Perhaps not in those exact words, but your intentions seemed clear enough. In emergency situations, we sometimes need to facilitate the paperwork." She glanced at the children. "Unless I've misunderstood your plans." "No," Jack said firmly. "You understood perfectly." He turned back to the twins. "I need you both to be brave a little longer. Listen to Dr. Winters and the nurses. Do what they tell you. I'll come for you as soon as I can." "Promise?" Lily asked again, the question carrying the weight of a lifetime of adult promises that had already been broken for these children. Jack removed Hannah's pendant from his pocket, carefully placing it around Lily's neck. "This was your mama's. My wife, your great-grandmother, gave it to her for protection. Now it's yours to keep you both safe until I get there." He gently touched the silver thunderbird. "This is my promise. White clouds always keep their promises." As Dr. Winters began to wheel the gurney toward the waiting ambulance, Jack felt a sudden panic. It seemed wrong to let them go, to be separated from them when he'd only just found them. Jamie must have sensed his distress because the boy turned back, his small face suddenly alight with wisdom beyond his years. "It's okay, Grandpa," he called. "Thunder will protect you like he protected us. He's magic." The simple faith in the child's voice stayed with Jack as he watched the ambulance doors close and the vehicle pull away, red lights flashing against the darkening sky. By the time he returned to Thunder's treatment room, the center was eerily quiet, most of the staff and all of the patients evacuated. Dr. Blackwater looked up from checking Thunder's IV. "The children got off safely?" Jack nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. "Good," Dr. Blackwater said, understanding in his eyes. "Thunder's holding his own. I've increased his pain medication to keep him comfortable, but his vitals are remarkably stable considering his condition." Outside, the storm's intensity seemed to double, rain lashing against the windows with a fury that made the glass vibrate in its frames. The wind howled through the buildings, finding every crack and crevice, creating an eerie whistling that sounded almost like distant voices. "We should move him now," Dr. Blackwater decided, looking at the increasingly violent weather. "Before the water starts rising, I don't want to be trying to transport a 1,000-pound bull through flooded corridors." "How do we do it?" Jack asked, surveying Thunder's massive form connected to various monitoring equipment. "The treatment platform is on wheels," Dr. Blackwater explained, pointing to the locking mechanisms at each corner. "It's designed for transport. We'll need to disconnect non-essential monitoring, keep the IV running, and push him to the freight elevator at the end of the hall." The task was daunting but necessary. Together, they carefully prepared Thunder for the move, disconnecting equipment that could be temporarily suspended and securing the essentials. The bull watched them with surprisingly alert eyes, as if understanding the urgency of their actions. "Ready?" Dr. Blackwater asked, positioning himself at the head of the platform. Jack nodded, taking position at the rear. "Let's do it." They released the brakes, and the platform moved with unexpected ease, gliding across the polished concrete floor. Thunder remained calm throughout the transfer, his massive body shifting slightly with the movement but showing none of the panic that might have been expected. They had just reached the elevator when the building's emergency lights flickered on, the main power failing as another violent thunderclap shook the structure. The elevator, thankfully, had emergency backup power and responded when Dr. Blackwater pressed the call button. "That was close," he muttered as they wheeled Thunder into the large freight compartment. "If we'd lost power a few minutes later." The elevator ascended slowly, the mechanical whirring unnaturally loud in the otherwise silent building. When the doors opened on the second floor, they revealed a large conference room that had been hastily converted into a treatment area. The tables had been pushed aside, creating space for Thunder's platform, and emergency medical supplies were stacked neatly against one wall. They had just finished positioning Thunder in the center of the room when a tremendous crash echoed from the floor below, followed by the unmistakable sound of rushing water. "The outer doors have breached," Dr. Blackwater said grimly. "Water's coming in." Jack moved to the window, peering through the rain-lashed glass at the scene below. What had been the center's parking lot hours earlier was now a churning lake, debris floating past on the current. The access road was completely submerged, cutting them off from the mainland as effectively as if they were on an island. "We're not going anywhere anytime soon," he observed, his voice steady despite the dire circumstances. Dr. Blackwater joined him at the window, his expression equally resolute. "Then we'd better make ourselves comfortable. It's going to be a long night." Behind them, Thunder made a low rumbling sound, almost as if in agreement. When they turned back to him, his eyes were fixed on Jack with an intensity that seemed to transcend his animal nature. "I think he's trying to tell us something," Jack said, moving to Thunder's side and placing a hand on his broad forehead. "What's that?" Dr. Blackwater asked, checking the bull's IV line. Jack's weathered face softened, decades of hardness giving way to a moment of clarity. "That sometimes standing your ground isn't stubborn pride. Sometimes it's exactly where you're meant to be." As if in response, Thunder's massive head shifted slightly, pressing more firmly against Jack's palm. The simple gesture, so reminiscent of how Hannah used to touch her beloved bull, brought tears to the old rancher's eyes. Outside, the storm raged with increasing fury, water continuing to rise around the building. But in that room, surrounded by the howling wind and pounding rain, Jack Whitecloud felt a strange sense of peace. For the first time in decades, he was exactly where he needed to be, doing precisely what needed to be done. And somehow, against all logic and reason, he knew Hannah would have approved. The night deepened, marked by the relentless percussion of rain against the windows and the occasional flash of lightning that illuminated the conference room in stark, momentary clarity. Jack sat beside Thunder, speaking to him in low tones that carried more comfort than actual meaning, while Dr. Blackwater monitored the bull's condition and kept a wary eye on the rising water levels. "First floor's completely flooded now," Dr. Blackwater reported, returning from a brief reconnaissance mission to the stairwell. "Water's about 4 feet deep in the main hallway and still rising. Good thing we moved when we did." Jack nodded, his hand never leaving Thunder's broad forehead. "He always did have good timing," he said, a hint of fondness breaking through his concern. "Even as a calf, he knew when to come in from the rain." Dr. Blackwater checked Thunder's vital signs again, a slight frown creasing his brow. "His pulse is weaker than I'd like," he noted, adjusting the IV drip. "The antibiotics are fighting the infection, but the strain on his system is substantial." "He'll pull through," Jack said with quiet conviction. "He's got too much to live for now." Thunder's eyes, heavy-lidded but still alert, seemed to follow their movements with unusual awareness. When Jack shifted position to ease his aging knees, the bull made a low, rumbling sound, as if in protest at the brief loss of contact. "He's always been attached to Hannah," Jack said, resuming his place. "From the day she bottle-fed him as a sickly calf. Never saw anything like it. A bull following a teenager around like a puppy. Clara, my wife, used to say they had matching stubborn streaks." Dr. Blackwater smiled slightly. "Hannah volunteered at our center a few times during vet school. She had a way with the difficult cases, the animals no one else could handle. I remember thinking she'd make an exceptional veterinarian." "She never told me she was studying veterinary medicine," Jack said, regret evident in his voice. "By then, we weren't speaking. I assumed she was still in agricultural science with Miguel." "She switched programs in her 3rd year," Dr. Blackwater confirmed. "Said she'd found her true calling. She was particularly interested in large animal medicine, especially cattle." Jack closed his eyes briefly, absorbing this new piece of information about the daughter he'd lost twice, once through estrangement and then forever through death. "She was trying to come back to the ranch in her own way," he murmured, "and I was too blind to see it." A sudden gust of wind rattled the windows, drawing both men's attention to the storm outside. The rain had intensified, if that was possible, falling in sheets so dense they obscured everything beyond the glass. "Any word from emergency services?" Jack asked, nodding toward the satellite phone. Dr. Blackwater shook his head. "They're overwhelmed with priority calls. Unless we're in immediate danger, we're on our own until the storm passes." "And the children? Any update from San Antonio?" "The last message confirmed they arrived safely," Dr. Blackwater assured him. "The hospital has your contact information. They'll update us when they can, but communications are spotty across the region with the storm." Jack nodded, seemingly satisfied with this information. His attention returned to Thunder, whose breathing had become slightly more labored over the past hour. "Talk to me straight, Doc," he said quietly. "What are his chances?" Dr. Blackwater considered the question carefully, respecting Jack enough to offer honesty rather than false comfort. "Under normal circumstances, with his age and injuries, I'd say guarded at best. The leg fracture is severe, and there's evidence of internal bleeding that we can't fully address here." He paused, studying Thunder's massive form. "But there's nothing normal about this situation. He's defied every expectation already. Found those children, protected them, kept them alive against impossible odds." "Because they're Hannah's," Jack said simply, as if this explained everything. And perhaps, Dr. Blackwater reflected, it did. The bond between Hannah and Thunder had clearly transcended normal animal-human relationships, extending now to her children in a way that science couldn't readily explain. I've spent my career balancing Western veterinary medicine with the traditional wisdom of my Cherokee ancestors, Dr. Blackwater said after a thoughtful silence. Western medicine would say Thunder's actions were impossible, that a bull couldn't track specific humans for miles, couldn't understand the concept of protecting children, couldn't override its natural instincts so completely. "And what would your ancestors say?" Jack asked. "That animals carry spirits far older and wiser than our own. That bonds of love create connections that transcend what we think we understand about the natural world." Dr. Blackwater's expression was contemplative. "My grandmother would say Thunder carries a guardian spirit, that he was meant to find those children, just as you were meant to find him." Jack absorbed this with quiet consideration. "Clara had some Cherokee blood, you know. Used to tell Hannah stories about spirit animals and how they watch over us." His weathered hand gently stroked Thunder's broad neck. "I always thought it was just stories." "Now, I'm not so sure." A particularly violent gust of wind slammed against the building, making the structure creak ominously. Thunder stirred, his massive body tensing as if preparing to rise. "Easy, old friend," Jack soothed, leaning closer. "Just the wind. We're safe here." But Thunder's agitation continued to increase. His breathing quickened, his eyes widening with what looked remarkably like fear. A low, distressed sound rumbled from deep in his chest. "Something's wrong," Dr. Blackwater said, checking the monitors. His heart rate spiking. Jack frowned, continuing his gentle stroking of Thunder's neck. "What is it, boy? What's got you spooked?" As if in answer, a flash of lightning illuminated the room, followed almost immediately by a deafening crack of thunder that seemed to shake the very foundation of the building. In that brief, stark moment of illumination, both men caught a glimpse of something outside the window. A massive wall of water surging down the valley toward them, carrying trees, debris, and destruction in its path. "The dam," Dr. Blackwater breathed, horror dawning on his face. "It must have partially failed." "Flash flood," Jack confirmed grimly, his years of ranching giving him immediate understanding of the danger. "Like the one that took Hannah and Miguel." They had perhaps minutes before the surge reached them. Dr. Blackwater sprang into action, gathering essential medical supplies and the satellite phone. "We need to get to the roof," he said urgently. "This floor could be breached." But Thunder was trying to rise now, fighting against his weakness and the sedation, his massive body struggling to gain purchase on the smooth platform. "He senses the danger," Jack realized, just like he must have when he found the children. "We can't move him to the roof, Doc," Blackwater said, frustration and concern warring in his voice. "The stairwell is too narrow, and his condition is too fragile. The exertion alone could kill him." Jack looked from Thunder to the approaching wall of water, visible now even through the rain-lashed windows. A decision crystallized in his mind with the clarity that comes only in moments of extreme crisis. "You go," he told Dr. Blackwater firmly. "Get to the roof. Call for emergency evacuation when it's possible. I'm staying with Thunder." "Mr. Whitecloud, Jack, that's suicide," Dr. Blackwater protested. "This room could be completely submerged if that flood surge hits at full force." "Maybe," Jack acknowledged, "or maybe this building will hold. Either way, I'm not leaving him. Not after what he did for Hannah's children." His expression softened. "I abandoned my daughter once through stubbornness. I won't abandon her bull the same way." Dr. Blackwater recognized the immovable resolve in the older man's face. This wasn't mere stubbornness or foolish bravado. It was redemption, a chance to right an old wrong in the only way now possible. "At least take this," he said, pressing the satellite phone into Jack's hand. "If the water stabilizes and you survive the initial surge, call for help. The children need you alive, Jack." Jack nodded once, pocketing the phone. Go on now, Doc. No sense in both of us risking our necks. Dr. Blackwater hesitated a moment longer, then clasped Jack's shoulder briefly before gathering the last of the emergency supplies and heading for the stairwell that led to the roof. Alone with Thunder, Jack returned to his position by the bull's head. "Just you and me now, old friend," he said softly. "Been a long road getting here, hasn't it?" Thunder's eyes, dark and knowing, fixed on Jack's face. The bull had stopped struggling, as if understanding the futility of escape, but his massive body remained tense, braced for what was coming. "You found them, didn't you?" Jack continued, speaking calmly despite the approaching danger. "Somehow you knew they were Hannah's children. You broke out of that rodeo pen and tracked them for miles. Protected them when they needed it most." His voice broke slightly. "You did what I should have done for Hannah. What I should have done for her children." Outside, the roar of the approaching flood surge grew louder, drowning out even the howling wind. Jack could see it clearly now through the windows, a churning, debris-filled wall of water rushing down the valley, consuming everything in its path. "I wonder if this is what Hannah saw," he murmured, more to himself than to Thunder. "That night on the river. Did she have time to be afraid? Did she think of me in those final moments?" Thunder made a low, rumbling sound, as if responding to the pain in Jack's voice. With what seemed like enormous effort, the bull shifted his massive head until it rested heavily against Jack's chest, a gesture so tender, so deliberately comforting, that it brought tears to the old rancher's eyes. "Thank you," Jack whispered, wrapping his arms as far around Thunder's broad neck as they would reach. "For loving her when I couldn't show it, for protecting her children when I wasn't there." The flood surge hit the building with the force of a freight train. Windows shattered in a spectacular burst of glass and water. The room filled with a deafening roar as the torrent poured in, sweeping furniture before it in a chaotic swirl. Jack clung to Thunder, bracing himself against the bull's solid form as the water rose rapidly around them. The treatment platform, thankfully, was bolted to the floor and remained stable despite the onslaught. Within moments, the water was up to Jack's waist, bitterly cold and filled with debris. Thunder remained surprisingly calm, his massive body providing an anchor in the chaos. His eyes never left Jack's face, even as the water continued to rise around them. "It's okay," Jack told him, having to shout now over the roar of the water. "We're going to be okay." But as the minutes passed and the water continued to rise, reaching Jack's chest and then his shoulders, the situation grew increasingly dire. Thunder's platform kept the bull's body mostly above water, but his head and neck strained to remain elevated. Jack realized with growing horror that the bull would drown if the water rose much higher. "No," he said fiercely, moving to position himself beneath Thunder's massive head, using his own body to help support the bull's weight. "Not after everything you've done. Not like this." The cold was seeping into Jack's bones, his aging muscles protesting the strain of supporting Thunder's head above water. But he held firm, determined that if these were to be their final moments, they would face them together. "Hannah would be so proud of you," he told Thunder, his voice hoarse with effort and emotion, "so proud of what you did for her children." As if understanding, Thunder's eyes locked with Jack's, a connection so profound that for a moment Jack could almost believe there was human intelligence behind that animal gaze, perhaps even something of Hannah herself, watching over her children through the bull she had raised and loved. The water level finally stabilized, stopping just below Jack's chin. For what seemed like hours but was probably only minutes, they remained frozen in that position. Jack supporting Thunder's head, Thunder's eyes fixed on Jack's face, both surrounded by the swirling, debris-filled water. Then, gradually, Jack became aware of a new sound cutting through the roar of the flood. the distinctive thwop, thwop, thwop of helicopter rotors. A powerful spotlight cut through the rain-lashed darkness, illuminating the flooded room in stark white light. The satellite phone in Jack's pocket had been ruined by the water, but it seemed Dr. Blackwater had managed to reach the roof and call for help. Through the shattered windows, Jack could see a rescue helicopter hovering precariously in the storm, a figure in a harness being lowered toward the building. "Help's coming," he told Thunder, relief washing through him. "We're going to make it." But even as he spoke, he felt Thunder's massive body shudder beneath his hands. The bull's breathing, which had been labored but steady, suddenly became irregular. His eyes, which had remained so alert throughout the ordeal, began to lose focus. "No, no, no," Jack pleaded, fear gripping his heart. "Hold on, Thunder, just a little longer. Help's almost here." The rescue worker reached the window, securing a line to the frame before maneuvering inside. "Sir," he shouted over the noise, "we need to get you out now. This building could collapse at any moment." "The bull," Jack insisted, refusing to move. "We have to save the bull, too." The rescue worker shook his head. "We can't airlift an animal that size. The helicopter can barely handle human evacuation in these winds." "Then I'm not going," Jack said firmly, his arms still supporting Thunder's massive head above water. "Sir, please." "He saved my grandchildren," Jack interrupted, his voice breaking. "I won't leave him to die alone." Something in Jack's tone must have communicated the gravity of the situation, because the rescue worker paused, then spoke urgently into his radio. After a tense exchange, he turned back to Jack. "Large animal rescue team is staging at higher ground 2 miles north," he reported. "If the building holds and the water recedes, they'll attempt extraction at first light. But you need to come now. You can't help him if you die of hypothermia." Jack looked down at Thunder, whose eyes had closed, his breathing growing increasingly shallow. The bull had given everything, broken his body, defied his nature, and traversed miles of dangerous terrain to protect Hannah's children. And now, having fulfilled that impossible mission, his strength was finally failing. "Thunder," Jack said, leaning close to the bull's ear, "I need you to hold on, for Lily and Jamie. They're waiting for us." Thunder's eyes opened slightly at the mention of the children's names, a flicker of recognition in their depths. "That's it," Jack encouraged. "Just hold on. I have to go with this man now, but I'll be back for you, I promise." He gently stroked the whirl of hair between Thunder's eyes, the spot Hannah had always called his thinking spot. White clouds always keep their promises, remember? With agonizing reluctance, Jack allowed the rescue worker to fit him with a harness. As they prepared to exit through the window, Jack turned back one last time. "Thank you," he said simply, the words inadequate for the depth of his feeling. "For everything." Thunder's eyes met his one final time, something like understanding passing between man and bull, an acknowledgement of the extraordinary bond they shared through Hannah. Then the rescue worker was pulling Jack through the window and the helicopter was lifting them away from the flooded building, away from Thunder. As they rose into the storm-lashed night, Jack kept his eyes fixed on the submerged wildlife center until it disappeared from view, his heart heavy with the knowledge that he might never see Thunder alive again. But alongside that heaviness was something unexpected, a sense of peace, of completion. Whatever happened now, Jack had kept faith with Thunder, just as Thunder had kept faith with Hannah's children. Some circles, once broken, could be made whole again. The helicopter banked sharply, heading toward the emergency staging area where medical personnel waited. Jack closed his eyes, exhaustion finally overtaking him. His last conscious thought was of Hannah, not as he had last seen her, angry and hurt, but as she had been in her happiest moments, standing beside Thunder in the summer sunshine, her hand resting easily on the young bull's neck, both of them looking toward the future with quiet confidence. "I found them, Hannah," he whispered, as darkness claimed him. "I found your children, and Thunder found them first." 1 year later. Morning light streamed through the newly installed windows of the old ranch house, casting long golden rectangles across the worn wooden floor. Jack Whitecloud stood at the kitchen sink, his weathered hands wrapped around a steaming mug of coffee, watching as Lily and Jamie raced across the pasture toward the special enclosure near the barn. "Don't run too fast," he called after them, though he knew the warning was likely lost in the excitement of their morning ritual. At 4 years old now, the twins had grown inches taller and miles more confident in the year since they'd come to live at White Cloud Ranch. "They'll be fine," said Dr. Ethan Blackwater, accepting the mug of coffee Jack offered him. "They know the rules." Jack nodded, unable to suppress a smile. "Never thought I'd have children running around this place again, especially not at my age." The renovation of the ranch house had been one of many changes over the past year. What had once been a fading cattle operation was now transforming into something new, part working ranch, part sanctuary for rescued livestock. The sign at the entrance road, freshly painted in blue and silver, read, "White Cloud Rodriguez Family Ranch." "The physical therapist called yesterday," Jack said, leading Ethan toward the porch. "Says Lily's leg is completely healed now. No lasting damage from the exposure." "Those are resilient kids," Ethan replied, settling into one of the rocking chairs that overlooked the property. "They've been through more in their short lives than most adults." From their vantage point, they could see the twins reaching the special enclosure, a spacious, carefully designed space with a covered shelter, soft bedding, and a gentle slope for easy mobility. Inside, a massive silver-white figure shifted at their approach, moving with deliberate care to greet them at the fence. Thunder. The bull's survival had been nothing short of miraculous. After Jack's rescue from the flooded wildlife center, the storm had gradually diminished, allowing the large animal rescue team to reach Thunder just before dawn. They'd found him still alive, his massive body partially submerged, but his head resting on a floating piece of conference table that had somehow wedged against the wall, creating a makeshift platform that kept his airways above water. The extraction had been complex and dangerous, requiring a specialized helicopter and equipment borrowed from a livestock transportation company. Thunder's condition upon arrival at the San Antonio Veterinary Hospital had been critical. Severe pneumonia from water inhalation, infected wounds, the fractured leg in danger of requiring amputation. For weeks, his survival had remained uncertain. Jack had divided his time between the children's hospital where Lily and Jamie were recovering and the veterinary facility where Thunder fought his own battle. Often he'd bring the twins to visit Thunder once they were well enough, their small hands reaching through the enclosure to stroke his broad forehead. "Grandpa! Dr. Ethan! Come see!" Jamie's excited voice carried across the morning air. "Thunder wants to show you something." Jack exchanged an amused glance with Ethan. "Duty calls." They made their way across the pasture, Jack moving with a spryness that belied his 83 years. The past year had softened the hard edges that grief and solitude had carved into him. Having the children, and purpose, had been better medicine than anything a doctor could prescribe. At the enclosure, Lily and Jamie were gently stroking Thunder's massive head. The bull had lost weight during his recovery, and the once feared rodeo champion now moved with the careful deliberation of an elderly gentleman. The fracture in his foreleg had healed, though he would always bear a slight limp, a permanent reminder of his days standing guard over Hannah's children. "Watch this," Lily said with a proud smile, reaching into the pocket of her overalls. She produced a bright red apple, holding it flat on her palm the way Jack had taught her. Thunder delicately took the apple from her hand, chewing with obvious appreciation. Then, to Jack's amazement, the bull lowered his massive head and gave a deliberate nod, almost like a bow of thanks. "Did you teach him that?" Jack asked, impressed despite himself. He'd spent his life around cattle and knew how unusual such behavior was, even from a bull as exceptional as Thunder. "Nope," Jamie declared. "He just started doing it. Thunder's smart." Ethan chuckled. "Can't argue with that." Jack reached out to stroke Thunder's broad forehead, fingers finding the familiar whirl of hair that Hannah had always called his thinking spot. The bull leaned into his touch, dark eyes regarding Jack with what could only be described as contentment. "The new school year starts next week," Jack said to the twins. "Are you excited?" Lily nodded enthusiastically. "Miss Rachel says I can bring pictures of Thunder for show and tell." "Everyone thinks it's so cool that we have a hero bull," Jamie added, his small face serious. "Tommy Jensen didn't believe me, but Miss Rachel told him it was in the newspaper, so it must be true." Indeed, the story of Thunder's rescue of the children had made headlines well beyond Texas. After the initial reports of the twins' survival, journalists had pieced together the remarkable tale. How a rodeo bull had escaped captivity, somehow tracked down his former owner's children after they were lost, and protected them for days until help arrived. The more skeptical media outlets had presented it as a remarkable coincidence, but those closer to the story knew better. "Speaking of Miss Rachel," Jack said, "she's coming for dinner tonight with Mr. Mason and Mrs. Abigail. They're bringing that peach cobbler you both like so much." The children's faces lit up at this news. Rachel Ironheart, who had once worked at the wildlife sanctuary where Thunder was initially treated, had taken a teaching position at the local elementary school. Mason and Abigail Carter, who had first discovered Thunder and the children by the creek, had become regular visitors to the ranch, helping with everything from fence repairs to childcare when Jack had appointments in town. "Can we show them Thunder's new barn?" Jamie asked. "Of course," Jack assured him. "That's why they're coming." The new barn was actually the renovated main cattle barn, redesigned to serve as both a functional ranch building and an educational space. Part of Jack's agreement with Child Protective Services when applying for permanent guardianship had included plans for making the ranch a safe, enriching environment for the children. What had begun as a simple updating of facilities had evolved into something more ambitious, a place where local school groups could visit to learn about sustainable ranching practices and animal care. It was, Jack realized, exactly what Hannah and Miguel had proposed all those years ago, the demonstration site that he had rejected so harshly. The thought brought a pang of regret, but also a sense of completion. Through Lily and Jamie, Hannah's vision for the ranch was finally taking shape. "Time for breakfast," Jack announced. "School day or not, you still have chores before your lessons." The twins gave Thunder one last pat before racing each other back to the house, their laughter carrying on the morning breeze. Jack and Ethan followed at a more measured pace. "The physical therapist wasn't the only one who called," Jack said once the children were out of earshot. "Got word from that university research team. They want to include Thunder in their study on animal cognition and bonding. Seems his case has got the scientific community scratching their heads." Ethan smiled slightly. "Some things can't be explained by science alone." "That's what I told them," Jack agreed. "But I said they're welcome to visit anyway. Figure Hannah would have liked the idea of Thunder teaching those college folks a thing or two." They reached the porch steps, pausing to look back at the ranch spreading out before them. The morning sun highlighted the new split-rail fence along the driveway, the freshly painted barn, and the small garden the twins had planted beside the house, all signs of renewal, of life continuing. "Sometimes I hear her," Jack admitted quietly. "Not in a crazy way, just moments when I'm with the kids or watching Thunder with them. It's like I can almost hear what she'd say." Ethan nodded, understanding in his eyes. "My grandmother would say the veil between worlds grows thin in the presence of great love." "Your grandmother sounds like a wise woman." "She was," Ethan agreed. "She also would have said that Thunder carries a guardian spirit, that he was meant to find those children just as you were meant to find him." Jack considered this, watching as Thunder slowly made his way to the shade of a large oak tree, the same tree where Hannah had spent countless hours reading books or just daydreaming as a girl. 4 generations of white clouds have worked this land, he said, echoing words he had once spoken to Hannah in anger. But I think the Rodriguez white clouds might be the ones who finally get it right. Inside the house, the phone rang. Jack excused himself to answer it, returning moments later with an expression of cautious optimism. "That was the adoption attorney," he reported. "Judge is signing the final papers tomorrow. Lily and Jamie will officially be my legal grandchildren." "Congratulations," Ethan said warmly, "though they've been yours in every way that matters for months now." Jack nodded, emotion making it temporarily difficult to speak. When he'd first petitioned for guardianship, there had been concerns about his age, about his ability to raise 2 active young children alone. But with character references from Dr. Winters, the Carters, and even the county sheriff, plus the undeniable bond between Jack and the twins, the initial temporary arrangement had gradually progressed toward permanent adoption. "There's something else," Jack added, composing himself. "I've been thinking about what happens when I'm gone. These children will need someone they can count on." Ethan raised an eyebrow, waiting for Jack to continue. "I'm updating my will," Jack explained. "The ranch will go to Lily and Jamie, of course. But I'd like to name you as their guardian if anything happens to me before they're grown." The request clearly caught Ethan by surprise. "Jack, I'm honored, but—" "You don't have to answer now," Jack interrupted. "Just think about it. You're the only one who understands what Thunder did for them, what he means to this family. And the kids adore you." From inside the house came the sound of childish laughter, followed by the clatter of breakfast dishes. Life, in all its ordinary, extraordinary complexity, continued its flow. "I'll think about it," Ethan promised. They entered the house to find the twins setting the table, small faces serious with concentration as they carefully placed forks and napkins. On the wall behind them hung a series of framed photographs: Hannah and Miguel on their wedding day, Maria Rodriguez, Miguel's mother, holding infant twins, and a newly added portrait of Jack with Lily and Jamie, all 3 grinning widely in front of the ranch sign. Beside these hung a framed newspaper article with the headline, "Miracle Bull Saves Children," accompanied by a photograph of Thunder being airlifted from the flooded wildlife center. The bull's story had captured public imagination, generating donations that had helped fund both his medical care and the initial renovations to make the ranch suitable for children. After breakfast, as the twins cleared their plates and prepared for their morning lessons with Jack, Ethan excused himself for his shift at the veterinary clinic in town. At the door, he paused. "Almost forgot. The Wildlife Education Center called. They want to know if you'd bring Thunder for their fundraiser next month, just for an appearance, no stress. They're naming their new large animal rehabilitation facility after him." Jack chuckled. Imagine that. The meanest rodeo bull in Texas, now a celebrity for saving children. "Life takes unexpected turns," Ethan observed. "That it does," Jack agreed, thinking of the long, winding path that had led him from lonely widower to estranged father to guardian of his grandchildren. "That it surely does." After Ethan departed, Jack supervised the twins' morning lessons at the kitchen table. Lily was already reading simple books, while Jamie showed an aptitude for numbers that reminded Jack painfully of Miguel. Both children had inherited their parents' intelligence and curiosity, asking questions that sometimes left Jack searching for answers. "Grandpa," Lily asked during a break, "does Thunder remember our mama?" The question caught Jack off guard. Though the children knew their parents had died, they rarely asked specific questions about Hannah and Miguel. Jack suspected they sensed his grief and instinctively avoided the topic. "I believe he does," Jack answered carefully. "Your mama raised Thunder from when he was just a little calf. They had a special bond." "Like us and Thunder?" Jamie asked. "Very much like that," Jack confirmed. "That's why he found you when you were lost. He recognized you as your mama's children." The twins exchanged one of their mysterious glances, the kind that suggested they were communicating in the silent language that only twins seem to share. "We remember her too," Lily said finally. "A little bit. She used to sing a song about a thunderbird." Jack's throat tightened. "That was a song your great-grandmother taught her. My wife, your mama's mama, was part Cherokee. The thunderbird is a powerful spirit in their stories." "Is that why Mama named Thunder after a thunderbird?" Jamie asked. "I suspect so," Jack said, marveling at how children could sometimes cut straight to truths that adults overlooked. He had never made the connection himself, but it made perfect sense, Hannah naming her special bull after the protective spirit from her grandmother's stories. The afternoon passed in the comfortable rhythm that had become their new normal. Lessons gave way to simple chores, then free time for the twins to play while Jack handled ranch business. As evening approached, they prepared for their dinner guests, the children helping to set the table with the good dishes reserved for company. Mason and Abigail Carter arrived first, bearing the promised peach cobbler and news from town. Rachel Ironheart followed shortly after, bringing wildflowers from her garden and books for the children. The house, which had stood silent and empty for so many years, now hummed with conversation and laughter. After dinner, as the adults lingered over coffee and the twins showed Rachel their latest art projects, Mason drew Jack aside. "Thought you'd want to know," he said quietly. "The old Rodriguez place finally sold. Young couple from Austin. Organic farmers looking to start a small operation." Jack nodded, absorbing this information. The property where Hannah and Miguel had lived, where they had died in the flash flood, had stood empty since the tragedy. Maria Rodriguez had been unable to return after losing her son and daughter-in-law, and after her death the place had fallen into disrepair. "They seem like good people," Mason continued. "Said they'd heard about what happened there, want to honor the land's history somehow, maybe plant a memorial garden." "I'd like to meet them," Jack said, surprising himself with the realization that he meant it. For years he had avoided driving past that property, the site of his greatest regret. But now, with Lily and Jamie in his life, it felt important to reclaim that connection, to heal that wound. As the evening wound down and goodbyes were said, Jack took the twins for their nightly visit to Thunder. The bull was already settled in his comfortable stall, but he raised his massive head at their approach, rumbling a gentle greeting. "Good night, Thunder," Lily said, reaching through the gate to stroke his broad nose. "See you in the morning," Jamie added, following his sister's example. Jack watched them, these two small beings who had brought purpose back to his life, saying good night to the extraordinary animal who had saved them. The circle was complete, he realized. What had been broken was now mended, different but whole. Later, after tucking the twins into bed with stories and prayers, Jack stepped onto the porch alone. The night was clear, stars scattered across the Texas sky like diamond dust. From the direction of Thunder's enclosure came the soft, rhythmic sounds of the bull settling for the night. Jack's gaze lifted to the stars, finding the constellation Clara had always pointed out to Hannah, the one her Cherokee grandmother had called the Thunderbird. It seemed especially bright tonight, watching over the ranch like a benevolent guardian. "We're doing okay, Hannah," he said softly to the night sky. "Your children are thriving. Your bull is content. And I'm learning every day what truly matters." A gentle breeze stirred the wind chimes Clara had hung decades ago, creating a melody that seemed to whisper back, "Some circles, once broken, can be made whole again." Jack smiled, feeling a peace he had not known in years. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges: school preparations, ranch work, the ongoing adjustments of raising young children in his twilight years. But tonight, under the watchful eyes of the Thunderbird, all was well at White Cloud Ranch. "There's an old Cherokee saying," Jack whispered into the night, echoing the words Dr. Blackwater had shared during those tense hours at the Wildlife Center. "When an animal chooses pain to protect others, the Great Spirit marks their soul." Thunder's soul, Jack thought, must shine like the brightest star in heaven. And somewhere, he hoped, Hannah was smiling. Dear friends, the Guardian Bull reminds us that it's never too late for second chances. Like Jack Whitecloud, many of us carry regrets about family relationships we've let slip away. The walls we build through pride often seem insurmountable until life gives us an unexpected opportunity to make things right. Thunder's extraordinary devotion to Hannah's children shows us that love transcends boundaries we thought impossible. Whether you're estranged from family, facing retirement uncertainties, or simply feeling the weight of past choices, remember Jack's journey from isolation to purpose. His transformation at 82 proves that our final chapters can be our most meaningful. The ranch that once represented Jack's stubborn solitude became a place of healing and new beginnings. What broken circles in your life might still be mended? What relationships might be restored if pride were set aside? We'd love to hear your story of reconciliation or second chances in the comments below. Have you experienced an unexpected thunder in your life? Something that reconnected you with what truly matters? Share your wisdom with our community. After all, as Jack discovered, it's through sharing our journeys that we find our way home.